how to race at a high heart rate when training at a low heart rate. So 3 of my Instagram reels hit over 1 million views when I shared my high heart rate during races despite training at a low heart rate. So clearly you're all curious about this, and honestly, I get it. I used to think that to race faster, I had to train faster. But that's one of the biggest mistakes I made early on in my running journey. So if you're new here, my name is Karoline. I started my running journey in 2019 when I spontaneously signed up for a marathon just 3 weeks before race day. I know that was crazy. Don't recommend doing that without structured training, and I ended up, for some reason, winning it. I ran a 3:05 marathon. So back then, I wasn't a runner. I did, however, play basketball, badminton, ultimate frisbee. I lifted weights, and I went on occasional runs. So it wasn't like I wasn't training. But that race showed me that I had a talent for long distance running. And with my hardworking nature, I was sure that if I trained smart, I could go to the Olympics. 7 months later, after hiring a coach and fully immersing myself in training, I ran a 2:46 marathon on just about 100 kilometers per week. I honestly felt unstoppable until I hit a major roadblock: injuries. In 4 years, I suffered 6 bone stress injuries. I switched coaches multiple times, but nothing seemed to work. And eventually, I took control of my own training, determined that my story would not end there. So now, 2.5 years later, I'm honestly a completely different athlete. I'm older, wiser, and finally healthy. And I started this channel to share what I wish I had known earlier. Because while running seems so simple, just putting one foot in front of the other, it's actually incredibly complex. And here's the thing. Competitive runners often have qualities that makes us great at racing, but terrible at training. And the biggest running myth is that running faster in training makes you race faster. I used to think workouts were about practicing running fast, but that's not the point at all. The point is to develop physiological adaptations that allow you to race faster in the future. So when I pushed too hard in every session, I was constantly overreaching, starting workouts too fast, slowing down, and struggling to finish. And I see so many runners making this same mistake, thinking that the magic lies in the workout itself, but the magic lies in the intensity control. If you don't train at the right intensity, you can't progress properly. This is facts. You'll hit a wall, overtrain, or get injured, just like I did. So how do you race at a high heart rate when most of your training is at low heart rate? It sounds counterintuitive, right? So let's break it down. So 1, you want to develop a strong aerobic base. And I talk about aerobic base training a lot on this channel, and that is because it's the foundation of endurance. If you truly understand why it matters, you'll actually commit to doing it. And that's why it's so important to educate yourself and understand it, because that is how you'll start implementing the runs to race faster. So your body has 2 main energy systems for running: your anaerobic system, which basically means without oxygen, and your aerobic system, which means with oxygen. And for any race longer than 2 minutes, you guys, 2 minutes, the aerobic system supplies the majority of your training. To put that into context, the marathon is 99% aerobic, and the half marathon is 98% aerobic. Even a 10K is 95% aerobic, and a 5K is 90% aerobic. That's insane, right? So if your aerobic base is weak, you'll rely too much on anaerobic energy, burn through glycogen too quickly, and fatigue much earlier. And that's why runners with weak aerobic bases see heart rate spikes early in the race and slow down significantly to survive. So on the flip side, a strong aerobic base keeps your heart rate stable and allows you to run faster with less effort. Exactly what we want, right? So how do you build your aerobic base? So the first thing you want to do is to increase your weekly mileage. The more you run, the greater the aerobic adaptation. So mitochondria, capillaries, oxygen efficiency. But there's a catch. So to run more, you need to slow down. And this is why you hear people, running influencers on Instagram like myself talk about the importance of running your easy runs truly easy. Because if you run too hard too often, you can't recover fast enough to safely increase your mileage. So running at a low intensity allows you to accumulate more volume without excessive fatigue. 3, low intensity running directly improves aerobic fitness. So running below your aerobic threshold, which is going to be 60 to 75% of your max heart rate, stimulates the mitochondria and capillaries most effectively, versus running too hard shifts reliance on anaerobic pathways, which doesn't build long-term endurance. So the bottom line is that to develop your aerobic base, you need to increase your mileage, but you need to make it sustainable by slowing down. So now that we've covered how I sustain a faster pace with a low heart rate, I want to talk about how do you sustain an even higher heart rate and race faster. So in my 1:25 half marathon, my average heart rate was 182, and that's about 92% of my max heart rate. First, high heart rate isn't inherently good or bad. Everyone's max is different, but you can train to handle a higher intensity by improving your lactate threshold, the point in which fatigue sets in. So really the bread and butter for you to be able to sustain the higher heart rates for longer is going to be 1, your threshold runs. So 20 to 40 minutes at 85% of max or even less. Steady state runs at about 80% of max heart rate. They're also incredible. Fast finish long runs that help you build strength near race efforts, and your high weekly volume, because that boosts overall aerobic capacity. And if you're curious about what sessions to do when, then check out this video that I'll link up here that's all about how to pick or choose a perfect run workout for your goals. And I made that video last week. You want to train your body to handle high heart rates. And one of my biggest struggles coming back from injury was handling intensity again, because my aerobic base was strong, but I had to bridge that gap between the low heart rate training and race efforts. And the key here is really going to be gradual exposure to higher heart rate training instead of just, jumping into all-out efforts. You want to build from the ground up. You want to be doing extended interval durations before increasing intensity. So for example, building tempo runs from 15 to 25 minutes over time instead of just jumping straight into threshold or speed sessions. This allowed me to reintroduce the higher heart rate training safely. Another mistake that I have made so many times, and honestly, I still do, and that I see so many other athletes or runners do way too often, is going out too fast, both in workouts and in races. Starting too fast means your heart rate spikes early and you suffer later. So instead, what you want to do is you want to practice starting controlled in both. So both in workouts, focusing on gradually increasing the pace and heart rate rather than pushing from the first rep. And in races, you want to stay patient in the early miles so that you can finish strong. So I recommend starting off 5 to 15 seconds slower to feel good and in control. And honestly, all my races where I've actually managed this, I have negative split and PR'd. So this is a game changer. And now I want to talk about strengthening your mental game, because racing at a high heart rate is just as much a mental battle as it is a physical one. Your mind starts playing tricks on you, telling you that you can't handle this for much longer and slows you down. And one of my key mantras is, it's painful no matter what. I keep saying this to myself. It's painful no matter what. Because the truth is, it is painful no matter what. Even though you slow down a little bit, it's still miserable. So I tell myself that I might as well get it over with quickly. Even when I run slightly slower, it's still uncomfortable. And that's the beauty of racing to your potential and the feeling of being able to control the pain and still keep going. It's just so powerful. And then I want to talk about how to optimize your race day warm up. Because another mistake I made in my early races was to not warm up enough before, especially a 5K and a 10K. I'd start too cold and my heart rate would spike immediately, and how long I warm up really depends on the race distance. But I always do dynamic drills, I do strides, and I also do short efforts at race pace. So check out my most recent 10K race vlog if you want to see the warm up that I did then. And I also have a follow along warm-up routine that I'll also link right here. So the key with the warm-up is to raise your heart rate gradually so it doesn't feel shocking when the race starts. This point is probably one of my most favorite points to talk about, and that is to trust the process and to stay relaxed. Because at the end of the day, racing at a high heart rate, relative to your max, is normal and not dangerous unless you have a heart condition. But if you're trained for it, it's not dangerous. So if you are pushing to your maximal capacity, your heart rate will be high. But if you've then incorporated the training elements that we've talked about in this video, your body will be able to handle it. And then you just have to trust that your low heart rate training has set you up for success. Trust that your volume at threshold works and the work is done, and it's all about executing. So I will pop a response that I got from a cardiologist, so you're not scared if your heart rate is super high while racing. So take his word for it, because obviously I'm not a cardiologist. If this video has helped you, please give it a thumbs up so more runners can see it. And if you're training for a race right now, comment below what's your goal. I'd love to hear what you're working towards. And also, if you want more in-depth training advice, make sure you subscribe. So I post new videos every week to help you train smarter and run faster. And I also have 5K training plans, 10K training plans, half marathon training plans, and marathon training plans that are all on heart rate and time on feet. So if that's something you're interested in, then check them out. The link is in the description. And thank you so much for watching.